Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my wrap up for the month of March. So starting off, the first book that I read this month was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This book was incredible and I loved it so much. However, I'm not going to go into too much detail about my opinions because I did do a full review on this book, which I will link down in my description. If you don't know, this book is about a girl named Blue Sargent who comes from a family of psychics. However, she doesn't possess any psychic abilities like the rest of her family, and she joins this group of boys known as the Raven Boys, and they go on adventures to discover the ley lines, which are these mystical anomalies that occur in Henrietta. So I ended up giving this book a 5 out of 5 star review on my Goodreads, and I even put it on my favorite shelf on my Goodreads. I really did love this book. It was incredible and I loved it so much. So I definitely recommend you go pick this up if you haven't. The next book that I read in the month of March is Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse by Rick Riordan. I'm currently doing a Percy Jackson reread, so I'm reading through all the Percy Jackson books. If you'd watched one of my previous videos, you might have heard me mention it, because I thought it was about time that I revisited my childhood favorite series, because I hadn't read these books in so long. For example, this one I hadn't read since I first read it 6+ years ago, and I had forgotten how incredible this book was. I loved it so much. I also gave this one a 5 out of 5 star rating on Goodreads, as well as put it on my favorite shelf. If you don't know, this is the third book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, which is a series that follows a boy named Percy Jackson, who is the son of a Greek god, and his adventures and just following him and what he has to deal with in being a demigod in his world. If you didn't know, Percy Jackson is my favorite series of all time, along with the Heroes of Olympus series, also by Rick Riordan, and they are incredible. If you haven't read them, go pick them up, and it was incredible. I had forgotten how good this was. I'd forgotten how emotional it gets closer to the end, and I had forgotten just how good Rick Riordan's writing is. And it is incredible. I had forgotten how much this series meant to me. It just makes me feel so warm inside. It makes me just feel so happy and at home, like I've come home after a long journey, and it feels so good. And this book is incredible. So if you haven't picked these up, I highly suggest you go and pick up the first one, Lightning Thief, and read them now. So the third book that I read in this month is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. I read this one for a reading vlog that I did, which I will also link in the description. I went into this book with high hopes because of all the hype that surrounded this book and the movie adaptation Love, Simon. At first I was disappointed because I was looking forward to so much more than what was in the beginning of this book. I also think I went into it with the wrong mindset. I went in looking for a cute, lovey-dovey, romantic contemporary, which this book is, but it's not the sole, especially in the beginning of it, it's not the sole story. So it started off for me as a coming of age story where Simon, the main character, is discovering who he is as a person and how his sexuality and stuff like that all fits into his life, which involves the romance obviously, but that came more in the second half of the book. So if you are looking for a coming of age story, definitely read this, but if you're also looking for a romance story, read this as well. However, you'll have to read through the coming of age stuff, which isn't bad, it's good, but if you're solely looking for romance, it's not in the first half of this book, or it's very little in the first half of this book, and it's more in the second half. In the end, I really did enjoy this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars on my Goodreads, and I really enjoyed this book. So the final physical book that I read this month was Percy Jackson and the Battle of the Labyrinth, which is continuing on for my reread. Once again, I had forgotten about how good this book was, and just I'd completely forgotten about all the events that had occurred in this book. It was so nice revisiting the story and the characters that we meet in this book, and revisiting the story and what happens in this one. It was so good. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars on my Goodreads, and it is on my favorite shelf as well. So I listened to 2 audiobooks along with the 4 books that I read this month, and the first one is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F by Mark Manson. I really liked this book. I loved the crude way in which Mark wrote about life, and that life isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and that instead it's a continuous struggle of problem solving and going through life solving problems, because without problems we end up going through things like a midlife crisis, for example. I really liked the crude way in which he talked about that, and just the way he went about explaining how life is. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars, and I really just loved how it was written, especially listening to it on Scribd. It just really resonated with me, and I really enjoyed it, and it was better than any other sort of self-help books that I had read or listened to in the past. So the last audiobook that I listened to this month is Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry. I really enjoyed listening to this book. It was so good. If you don't know about Heretics Anonymous, it is a book about an atheist boy named Michael who goes to a very strict school after his dad takes a new job that has to force the whole family to move. So Michael has to go to a new school, and it follows him through his discovery of different things surrounding religion and people. I really enjoyed this book, and it gave me a lot of different viewpoints on people in religion, particularly within the same religion. For example, Michael realizes that through his experience, he's noticed that some of the Catholic characters in the book, they have the same God, but they see him as different. So one will see him as this all-forgiving, all-knowing being, but somebody else might see him as this strict, cruel being who will rain down a hell upon them if they go against what they say. That was really interesting, and I loved listening to it, and it was just a fun novel, but it brought up some very interesting viewpoints and opinions that really made me think, and I really enjoyed that in that book. So I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars, and I will definitely most likely be purchasing this book in hardback so I can read it again. So those are the books that I read and the audiobooks that I listened to in the month of March. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to click that bell icon so that you get notified every time I make an upload. All my social media links will be linked in the description below if you want to go and follow any of those. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys!